Hi there. This video is a continuation of the external business environment. We're going to start by discussing the economic environment. We're going to break down each of the different dimensions. This video is going to be devoted entirely, though, to the economic environment, just describing essentially what it is, what are some of the different variables that are considered in this type of environment, of course. As we've mentioned before, the economic environment exists outside of the scope or control of a particular business. And so unfortunately, we don't have the ability to affect what happens, but by studying it, by analyzing it, we can put ourselves in a position where we can potentially adapt to it and make some changes to our overall strategy for the purpose of making better decisions and ultimately reaching a better outcome, whatever that may look like. So really, what is the economic environment? So the economic environment primarily concerns the health of the economy where the business actually operates. And so we're concerned with ultimately, what is the condition of the economy? What type of position is it in, and how ultimately can that potentially impact our business? And so being concerned about the health of the actual economy, we're typically concerned with things like potentially GDP and the unemployment rate. We can also be concerned about things like consumer confidence. Consumer confidence being how confident consumers are that their financial position is going to be better off at some point in the future. And so if consumer confidence is low, then obviously people have a tendency to try and save more. They don't want to spend because they feel like their financial position may not get better. This is pretty common now. We have a lot of uncertainty with regards to the looming fiscal cliff. And so consumer confidence has been decreasing somewhat because there's a little bit of concern over, obviously a financial position if tax rates obviously go up, if spending decreases in certain areas. And so that causes consumers to pull back on spending. And so what happens, though, is because of GDP, 2/3 of gross domestic product is dependent upon consumer confidence, on how confident people like you and I feel. Because if I'm not confident, I'm not going to spend money, which is going to affect the economy. It's going to affect the actual unemployment rate. And so this all works in a very kind of cyclical fashion, if you will, because how confident consumers are will affect ultimately what businesses produce, because they're not going to have demand. And then what GDP affects will be unemployment. And it kind of goes in this cyclical type fashion here. But how this relates back to the economic environment is businesses are very, very careful to assess what is the economy like, what are the conditions like, what is gross domestic product like, what is the unemployment rate, what is consumer confidence at. Because if I get a gauge for the health of the economy, I can better understand, how do I adapt to what the economy is like. We saw in 2008 when the recession officially took hold that a lot of companies were downsizing. They were reducing unemployment. They were laying off or terminating employees because the demand for their goods and services couldn't substantiate the size of the workforce. And so by being in tune with what happens in the economy, businesses can make decisions in areas such as maybe production. They can also look at things like capital investments, right? Ultimately, if we're going to pay to expand or to purchase additional equipment, that's obviously a very, very important piece as well that businesses want to consider. Is there demand enough for me to purchase additional machinery? Even your labor force, right? Are we going to need to hire additional employees? And all this essentially relates to demand for your particular products. And so without demand, we know that businesses aren't going to necessarily thrive. A business needs to maintain some level of profits in order to continue to operate. And so if that isn't present, then businesses need to make adjustments so that they can continue to operate. And assessing the economic environment can certainly provide businesses with an advantage if they know ultimately what to anticipate in terms of demand, so they can in turn match the supply of goods and services with that level of demand. Like I mentioned before, businesses cannot affect what happens in the economy. The best we can do is react to it and put ourselves in a position to leverage those opportunities and attempt to insulate ourselves against those threats.